The teachings of Rabbi Ephraim Sprecher, Dean of Students at Diaspora Yeshiva on Mount Zion, Jerusalem.
Why the Mishnechnas Nisan Marvin B'Simcha? Nisan, why is the month called Nisan? Sherry, why is the month called Nisan? Because all the miracles took place. The month of miracles, supernatural miracles. So why, when the month of Nisan happens, why don't we Marvin B'Simcha in the month of Nisan? What's so special about Adar? And why is Hashem MIA in the Megillah? Missing in action. Let's think. What happened in Nisan, the month of miracles? It's called Nisan, right? 10 supernatural miracles, splitting of the Red Sea. But all of those miracles were only temporary. All supernatural miracles, by definition, are temporary. Each of the Makkahs lasted only a week. Makkah's Choshech lasted only 3 days, and Makkah's Bechoros only 1 day. The other Makkah's 7 days. Splitting of the Red Sea, how long did it last, Avram?
1 night.
1 night. Even the Man, 40 years, and that was it. So all the Nisim in Nisan, the supernatural miracles, by definition, are temporary. They don't last. What's so special about Adar is all of the happenings that are happening to us, even though we think they're mikra, vayikra, vayikar, the things that look to happen by accident. If you read the Megillah, it looks like it's a string of coincidences. But the month of Adar teaches us that every twist and turn that happens to us is a nes nistar. It's a nes nistar. The month of Adar, the Megillah, you have to look behind the mask and realize what we think is mikra, what we think is teva, Avram Teva's gematria what? Elokim. What looks like nature is actually God. So that should make me very happy, because in Nisan, the supernatural miracles are only temporary, they don't last. The month of Adar is dafke, the hidden miracles. The miracles that I think are mikra, it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God behind the mask. What I call mikra, Memkov Reishe, rearrange the letters, what do you get? Rakmei Hashem. Hateva Gematri Elokim. All mundane events, all that happens to us in our daily lives, it's all Nes Nistar. It's all miracles. It's not like splitting of the Red Sea, which is temporary, or all the other miracles in the month of Nisan. Temporary. It doesn't last. Kriyas Yamsov, man. But Adar makes me happy that everything that happens to me in my life, a good day or a bad hair day, it's all Him. That should make me very happy, that it's all God, that Hashem is always with me. The parsha we read yesterday, Vayikra. Vayikra, Rashi says, Loshen Chiba. So my dear Talmud Rabbi asked a Bam Kasha. Vayikra is Loshen Chiba. And then it says Vayidaber Elov. Lovey-dovey. The term Vayikra is a lovey-dovey, terms of endearment, says Rashi. But then it says Vayidaber. So Rachmiel asked, it should have said Vayomer. Because we know Vayidaber is what? Loshen Kasher. Tough as nails. In Vayomer is Loshen Raka. So Rachmiel asked Abam Kasher, if it's Vayikra, God called him Loshen Chiba, lovey-dovey, terms of endearment, then God should have said Vayomer to Moses, but he says Vayidaber. Why not Vayomer? Vayomer is what? Soft, lovey-dovey talk. So God, I'm mixed up. You said Vayikra Loshen Chiba, and then it says Vayidaber. And more important, what's the message for me in the year 2019? And we always read this parsha around Purim time when it's a leap year. This is the idea, Rachmiel, this is the idea. That even when God talks tough to us, even Vayidaber, Loshen Kasher, it's still Vayikra. It's still Loshen Chiba. That even when God shows us tough tzoros lo yaleinu, Like the Purim and the Matzav that we have today, the Eretz Yisrael, Nebuch was a terror attack today.
One dead and two fighting for
Today?
Today, yeah. Somehow it's Vayikra. Somehow we don't understand, right? It looks bad, but Adar is Rosh Hashanah, Ein Davar Ra. Ein Davar Ra. It looks bad. It looks like Vayidaber, Lashon Kasher. Somehow it's Vayikra. Somehow HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what? Tough love. We don't understand it. But whatever God does, it's Vayikra. Therefore, there's a small aleph there. Because without the aleph, it's Vayikor. What does Vayikor mean? Mikre. It looks like Mikre, but there's an aleph there. Vayikra. What looks like Mikre is really Lashon Chiba, even though we cannot understand it. But just to know that God feels our pain. Imo anochi betzara, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, Imo anochi betzara. That's comforting, that God feels our pain and He's always with us behind the mask. God is playing hide and seek with us, or peekaboo. Why? Why does God play the game with us? His name is not in the Megillah. To allow free will. Because if God would reveal Himself in all of His glory, Abraham, we'd all be what? Without the mask, we'd all be what? Robots. Religious robots. And God doesn't want puppets, He wants partners. So therefore He has to wear the mask to allow free will to operate. To look like things happen by chance, but that's just a game to allow free will to play out. But we should not be fooled by the mask. What you see is always not what you get. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu behind the mask. To exercise our free will, God has to wear the mask, but we have to realize that it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's Marbin B'Simcha. Because God is always there, even when we think it's not. You're having a good day or not a good day, God is there with us. And He is it, everything. So why is God's name not in the Megillah, Avram? Right? Why is He MIA? The answer is, if you read the Megillah carefully, you'll see that every twist and turn is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. His name doesn't have to be there, because if you read between the lines, you'll see that what? Everything in the Megillah is what? It's all God. I'll give you an example. So therefore, His name is not necessary, because it's all Him. He's not just found in the super-duper supernatural miracles that are only temporary. He's found in our day, what happens to us in our daily lives, behind closed doors. That's the same God of the splitting of the Red Sea. But it's not temporary. He's always there with us. And this idea should make me very happy. God's name is not in the Megillah. I said you don't need it because it's all Him. Why? Remember? The king gives an order. He sends an SMS. He sends a couple of eunuchs there. He wants Vashti Hamalka to appear Beketer Malchut. What does Beketer Malchut mean? Wearing her crown, but nothing else.
Nothing else.
Right? Keter Malchut in a birthday suit. Vatemoy Malki Vashti Lavo. She refuses. All of a sudden, Chanor, she became shy.
Yeah.
I mean, the Talmud says she made Madonna look like a schoolgirl, like a kindergarten girl. What? All of a sudden she refuses. Why? Bidvar HaMelech, the Megillah says. Bidvar HaMelech. What does that mean? With the word of the king. Who's the king? That's Poshep Shat. But Bidvar HaMelech, who put the bee in her bonnet? Today I don't feel like parading in my birthday suit. Bidvar HaMelech. To get her out of the way. To make room for whom? For Esther. Bidvar HaMelech. Yiddish Yisrael. Bidvar HaMelech. It's the king of the universe. He put that idea in her head not to come. All of a sudden she became Miss Shy. She used to be a runaround Sue. But Hashem did that in order what? Aryeh, to get her out of the way, to make room for Queen Esther. See how God works? He puts the refuah before the makkah. You know, we read the Megillah in 45 minutes, but it plays out over 9 years. Esther won the beauty contest, got in the palace. Only 9 years later was Haman swinging from the yardarm. So we have to connect the dots. The jigsaw puzzle in our own Purim that we're writing, every one of us is writing their own Megillah. with all the twists and the turns, why this, why me. It's all him. Peekaboo. Or hide and seek, right? Look behind the Purim mask. The Maral tells us that the very act of Hester Panim is part of the Gula process. The very act of Hester, how do you say Hester Panim in English? But God hides his face. That's part and parcel of the process of Gula, says the Maral. We know that the darkest hour is right before dawn. Esther in Tehillim is called Ayelet HaShachar. Esther is called Ayelet HaShachar. What does Ayelet HaShachar mean? Going up at the dawn. But the Vilna Gaon asked the question, Shachar means dawn. But it's the same word as Shachar. What does Shachar mean? Black is black. Shachar means black, and Shachar means dawn. It's the same word. What's the connection? Says the Vilna Gaon, just like in the physical world, the blackest hour is right before dawn, so too in the spiritual world. When things look blackest, Haman, the final solution, we have the dawn of Esther. Ayelet HaShachar. Shachar, dawn, Shachar, black. When things look black and bleak, that's exactly when the dawn of redemption comes. And that's the message of Megillat Esther. So a person's having a bad hair day, don't blame your boss, don't blame your spouse.
Blame the hairdresser.
It's all, that should be very comforting of him, right? Because God says, Ima anochi b'tzara. So Marvin b'simcha. Adar, Aleph Daled Reish, Ein Davar Ra. What looks bad, somehow is Hakol Tova. Vayikra, Loshen Chibon, Vayidaber. Vayidaber is talking tough as nails. Afa became Vayikra. That even when God talks tough to us, Chas v'sholom, somehow it's still Loshen Chibon, it's still the Vayikra there. Even when it's not Vayomer. The recent heavy rains that we have, Baruch Hashem, what a blessing. The burned fields around Gaza, because of the fire balloons, have become lush and green again. Because of all of the ash, of all of the fires, because of the fire balloons, have provided the soil with extra richness and extra fertility. It's like the Nes Nistar of Purim. The burned fields by Gaza have become rejuvenated. Because of all of the ash of the balloons, the fire balloons Avram have turned the fields around Gaza into ash. But thanks to the heavy rains, those fields are blooming again. The last year, Avram, we didn't have any heavy rains. We had a drought last year. Dafka this year, there's heavy rains. Last year, we didn't have the fire balloons. Kawinky dinky, the heavy rains came this year when the fields were turned into ash, and not last year. People thinking that it's all mikra. It's a chance that it rained heavy this year, not last year. But we know the truth, Avram. No. It rained heavy dafka this year. Because this year, because of all the fires around Gaza, have turned the fields into ash, and all that ash became saturated into the ground, and thanks to the heavy rains, the fields are blooming and lush again. That's just amazing. And last year, we didn't need the heavy rains because there were no fire balloons. So it looks like a coinky dinky, Aryeh, but no. It's the Nes Nistar of Purim. We are living it. What looks like a mikra is really Rakmei Hashem. That's pretty amazing. Ein Davar Ra. The fires look terrible, turning the fields into ash around Gaza, and now they're more lush and green than before, thanks to the fires and the heavy ash, which provided the soil with extra nutrients and extra fertility and extra, another word for it, rich. And the heavy rains have made it extra fertile, extra fertility, extra richness. Ein Davar Ra. We're living our own Purim miracle. Now, isn't it strange, Avram, we name a cookie after Arafat? Chanoch, would you call a cupcake after Arafat an Arafat cupcake?
No.
Abu Mamzer Danish? What are you calling it a Hamantash for? The Gemara Megila tells us on page 14 that somehow Avram Haman was good for the Jews. Say what? The 48 Nevi'im told us to do tshuva. It went in one ear, out the other. Get lost, they said. Haman comes along with the final solution, and all the Jews become Haredi. So Bnei Yisachar, my great-great-grandfather, says, in a strange way, Haman was good for the Jews. He caused the Jews to do tshuva. He was the poster boy for the Baal Tshuva movement. And therefore we name a cookie after him. We owe him. Isn't that incredible? Bizarre. Strange. Haman was the father of the BT movement. Chanoch, did you know that? The Megillah says that. Because of him, all the Jews received the Torah, Bahava, Baratzon. And therefore, in Hebrew, it's called Oznei Haman. Why is it called Oznei Haman?
Because he forced us to hear.
Beautiful, Malka. She hit a home run. Haman forced us 10 ozen. Haman forced us. Can I have a cup of water, please? Yes, thank you. Haman forced us to what? 10 ozen. So therefore, in Hebrew, they called Oznei Haman. Because of Haman, we gave ear to the Torah. In a bizarre way, Avram, we owe Haman. So we name a cookie after him. Gemara Megillah tells us, Haman Samach. When the lottery fell in the month of Adar, he was happy, Zisel, because that's the month that what? That Moshe Rabbeinu died. V'lo Yada, says the Gemara, he didn't know that in the month of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was what? What do you mean he didn't know, Chanoch? He could have checked Google. Haman, no joke, Haman was a very smart guy, Aviezer. Check Google. What he didn't know that Moshe died in the month of Adar.
It doesn't say that.
Why did it go to Google?
He didn't believe in the oral Torah. It doesn't say the written Torah.
What does it mean? Haman knew that when Moshe died, the end of supernatural miracles. No more splitting of the Red Sea, no more deer and quail, no more man, no more bears. That chapter in Jewish history is closed. That he knew. So he was very happy. But he didn't realize, he knew when Moshe was born, but he didn't realize how was the birth of Moshe executed. Moshe was born. How was he saved? By splitting of the Red Sea? It was Nes Nistar. His mother put him in a basket, and he's floating down the river, and all of a sudden, Bat Paroi felt she needed to go to a jacuzzi. Her jacuzzi in the house broke. So why didn't she take a bath, Avram, before baby Moses floated by? Why didn't she come take a bath after the baby Moses? Pitom, Dafke, in the same moment, but the little basket is floating by. She comes to take a bath, and she saves his life. Kuminky dinky. Mikre. Looks like a mikre. Haman didn't realize that even though there's no more splitting of the Red Sea, there's always the Nes Nistar. Look how Moshe Rabbeinu was born. The whole thing was a Nes Nistar. She went to bathe Dafke at that moment when he's floating by, not earlier and not later. And she saves him. And he's raised as a prince of Egypt in the house of the very king that wants to destroy him and his people. Pretty strange, right? Esther, queen of Persia. And Moshe Rabbeinu, prince of Egypt. It's all so weird. It looks like a coinky dinky. Haman didn't realize that even though there's no more Nes Nigla like Kriyat Yamsuf, Avram, there's always what? Nes Nistar. And his birth and the way he was saved proved that. She happened to save him. She had Machmanis on him. He became the prince of Egypt. And Esther becomes the queen of Persia. That Haman didn't realize. That's pretty amazing. How God works. Looks like Hashem has a sense of humor. Can you imagine that? The very king who decreed that all Jewish baby boys have to be destroyed and killed, in his own home, a Jewish baby boy is raised. I mean, it's just... We know Achron Chaviv. 1 second. We know saving the best for last. Arya, that's why Vini's table comes at the end of a meal. Right? Saving the best for last. But some people say life is short, begin with dessert. Because you never know. Well, we know saving the best for last. The last book in the Bible is, Aryeh, Esther. You look at the Vatichtov Esther, there's a big tough there. Vatichtov Esther. Esther wrote the Megillah, that's all she wrote. There's a huge tough there, big tough in the Megillah. So the Talmud says, why? Just like a tough is the last letter of the Aleph Bet, Megillat Esther is what? The last book in the Bible. Named after, no. It's placed, Chronicles was placed last, but chronologically, the book of Esther, chronologically, was the last book in the canon. And it's named after a woman, Aryeh, because women always get the last word. Not a joke. Esther, the last book in Tanakh, there's a big tofte, vatichtov Esther, like the tof is the last letter of the alphabet. Women get the last word. It's amazing. The very last verse in the last book in the Bible, the very last verse. Now keep in mind, saving the best for last. V'dover shalom l'chol zaroi, speaking peace to all of his children. Who's the he? That's Poshim Shat. But a P, Kabbalah, that's Hashem. V'dover shalom l'chol zaroi, speaking peace to all of his children. We're all God's children. And what does Hashem want more than anything? That we should speak peace to each other. You think Hashem is happy what went on in the Kotel last Friday? You think Hashem was happy? How so-called Haredi Jews cursed and spit and pushed women. So they did wrong. But that's why you have to curse them and spit on them and push them. That's doive shalom l'chol zaroi. Hello? What are you learning all day? The doive shalom l'chol doesn't say just the frum Jews. God says you should speak peace l'chol zaroi, to all of his children. Ezechil Hashem. The doive shalom l'chol zaroi. God says we have to speak peace to all of God's children. We're all God's children. But some people just don't get it, Aryeh. They just don't get it. I can't believe this. Ezechil Hashem it was. Now, I'm a lamed chus on women on the wall. I'm a lamed chus on them. You have to be a lamed chus on all Jews. Their husbands don't put on tefillin. So they say, Zisel, ishta kigufo. So we'll put on tefillin because our husbands don't. You know, ishta kigufo, how do you say that in English? A man and wife are one body. Okay, they're wrong. But you don't spit on them and curse them and shame them in public. That's much worse than what they're doing. You pull them aside, you say, let's have a cup of coffee. Can we talk about it? I'll take you out for lunch. I'll explain to you. It's not correct what you're doing, even though you mean well. But to curse them and shame them, Avram. So if they're wrong, but by cursing and spitting at them and pushing them, it's much worse, in my humble opinion. But anyway, let's move on over here. Rav Kook says something amazing. Yes, Aryeh? Well, I'm sorry.
It was a question from a background. Did Pharaoh know that his daughter had adopted?
Of course not. He would have killed him.
You never saw him?
Right? You didn't see the movie?
Which depends which movie it is.
The book is better. In fact, the book is so good, I literally worship the author.
You mean the movie with Charlton Heston?
Get it? I worship the author.
Prince of Egypt. Because in the cartoon, there's a reference.
No, he didn't know. He didn't know. Otherwise, he would have killed him, right? He didn't know. She covered it up. She covered it up.
What did she say? She had a baby?
She found a foundling.
Oh, she found
Right? The Jews had light. So the Talmud says in Megillah, what's the light? The light of Torah. Says Rav Kook something amazing. I know you like Rav Kook. She'ika pu'ulat Yisrael al kol ha'olam hoya b'mei Haman. Again, getting back to Haman, why we name a Danish after him. The Iker outreach program of the Jewish people, where they reached out to the world and touched somebody, happened in whose days? B'mei Haman. Why? Says Rav Kook, Shero kol afsei oretz, all the nations of the earth saw how God saved us even in Galut. That God doesn't abandon us even in Galut. And because of that, many non-Jews became Geirim. V'rabim imamei oretz misyahadim. Many peoples of the earth became Jews. Because they saw the Yad Hashem even when the Jewish people are in Galut. V'chozer l'mutav. And many people became what? Much better. Become a Devarim. Through what? Haman. It's just incredible how whatever God does, it looks bad. You got to look, that's peekaboo, Gershon. You got to look behind the mask. It looks bad, but behind the mask, hakol letova. You don't see it right away. You don't see it right away. So according to Rav Kook, the purpose of Haman was to attract Gerim. Here is David, the great Rav Kook. The purpose of Haman was to attract Gerim. That's what happened. So because of Haman, many non-Jews became Jews, and even those that didn't became righteous Gentiles. In a strange way, because of the Haman miracle, Hashem saved us. The Goyim saw the light. You light up my life. Pretty amazing. Now, Man Nishtana Megillat Esther, before the Man Nishtana, from all the other Megillas. Zisel, there are 5 Megillot in Tanakh. We read the book of Ruth, when? Shavuot. How many times? Once. We read the book of Shir Hashirim, when? Pesach. How many times? Once. We read Kohelet on Sukkot. Once. We read the book of Eich on Tisha B'Av. Ma Nishtana Megillat Esther, Mikol HaMegillot, that once is not enough. You got to read it twice. Once is not enough. Why? What?
Or 4 times.
You got to read it at night and sleep on it, and then read it again. What seems like a mikra, a string of coinky dinkies. Esther happened to win the beauty contest. I mean, was she the prettiest girl? What about Miss Italy? What about Miss South America? I mean, she happened to win the beauty contest. Mordechai happened to walk by when Bigson was Serish were plotting. Couldn't he walk by 10 minutes earlier or later? It looks like a string of coinky dinkies. You got to sleep on it, and the next morning you got to what, Aryeh? Read it again. And read between the lines. That what looks like a mikra, it's all Hashem. We have to connect the dots and the jigsaw puzzle. All of us in our personal lives are writing our own Megillah, and we have to connect the dots. Not easy. You got to keep rereading it again and again. 9 years the Megillah played out. We read it in 45 minutes, right? 9 years it played out. That's pretty amazing. It's just amazing that if you count the letters in Megillat Esther, there are 12,110 letters in Megillat Esther. So what? Rav Weissmandel, the one who jumped from a moving train from Auschwitz, he survived the war. He wrote a work called Toras Chemet, without a computer. He says the rabbis are called sofrim. What does sofrim mean? Counters. It means scribe. Also, sofrim means to count. Because the job of the rabbis is to count the letters in Tanakh. And you see amazing thing. He counted the letters in Megillat Esther without a computer, and he says there are 12,110 letters in Megillat Esther. So what? Glad you asked. Megillat Esther happened over 9 centuries after the Torah was given. So there should be no way that the Torah should know about what? Esther. It happened 9 centuries before the Torah was given. Says Rav Weissmandel in the book Toras Chemet. Incredible. If you count from the first aleph in the Torah, the word Bereshis has an aleph, right? Count from that aleph, count 12,110 letters. Torah scroll has 304,805 letters. But you count from Bereshis aleph, there's an aleph. Count 12,110 letters, you'll get what? Samach. And from that samach in the Torah scroll, count another 12,110 letters, you're going to get what? A tov. And you count another 12,110 letters from that tov, you're going to get what? Reish. Esther. The name Esther is spelled out in the Torah by skip letters, the exact amount of letters that what are in a... Could that be a coinky dinky referral? Aleph Samach Tov Reish is spelled out in a Torah scroll, but exact skip letters, the amount of letters that are what? Contained in Megillat Esther. Coinky dinky?
You're starting from the Aleph and Bereshis?
Right. Start from the Aleph and Bereshis. There's an Aleph. Count 12,110 letters, you get a Samach. From that Samach, count another 12,110 letters, you can get a Tov. And from that Tov, count another 12,000 letters, you're going to get a Reish. It gets even better, Zisel. It gets better. In Parshas Kisisa, the Torah mentions the 11 herbs and spices. Remember Kentucky Fried Chicken? The 11 herbs and spices, right? That when it... One of them is called Mor Doror. One of the in Parshas Kisisa, it's called Mordoror. It says Unkelis Mordoror, Mordechaya. On Mordoror, Unkelis says Mordechaya. So what's amazing about that? So the Talmud says that Mordoror is a reference to Mordechai, even though he's going to live 9 centuries later. Says Rav Weissmandl, you take the mem from Mordoror, the mem from Mordoror, which Unkelis says Mordechaya. It's a reference to Mordechai. You take the mem from that Mordoror in Parshas Kisisa, and you count 12,110 letters, you're going to get what? A reish. Count another 12,110 letters from that reish, you're going to get a dalid. Another 12,110 letters, you get a kaf. And another 12,110 letters, you're going to get what? Are you hearing this? Are you getting this? You're not getting it, right? I've repeated again?
No. We get it.
It's just amazing.
It's not coincidence.
How could it be a coinky dinky? Avram, Torres Chemed, Rav Weissmandl, the night Barov, he jumped from a moving train in Auschwitz, opened up Yeshiva Mount Kisco. He's a great Kabbalist. And he says it's just amazing.
So is it the Mordoror?
You count in Parshas Kisisa.
Oh, Kisisa.
The Torah lists 11 herbs and spices. Remember the kernel? One of them is mur. Unkelis says Mordechai. Say, why Mordechai? The Talmud says that mur, just like mur is a chief spice of the 11, Mordechai was the chief of the Sanhedrin. So Rav Weissmandl counted from that letter M, mem, from mur, he counted 12,100 letters, he got to a reish. Mem reish. He counted another 12,000 letters, he got to a dalit. Another 12,110 he got to a kaf, and another 12,110 he got to what? A yud. Again, the name Mordechai and Esther are spelled out in the Torah by the exact amount of skip letters that are contained what?
In the Megillah.
Quinky dinky, right? I don't think so. But God plays the game with us, Avram, because he doesn't want any puppets. He wants partners.
No, but
So therefore he wears the mask, and he says, you want to be fooled? Fine. But peekaboo. What you see is always not what you get. Look behind the mask, yes? You don't believe it, you can count, Malka. I think you're skeptical. Take out a book and count, and you see that he's right.
You're talking about Hester Punim, but here Rabbi Weissmandl spells it out, that it's, if you look closely, there's no Hester Punim here.
So, I'm glad you came today. The Maral says the very act of Hester Punim is part of the process of Gula. But it looks like Hester Panim, says the Maral, is really the process of Gula. It's part of the game that a Kodesh Baruch Hu plays with us.
And the Kabbalist can find it. And the Kabbalist can find it.
Nachon. Now, there's a mitzvah to what? There's a mitzvah what? To get drunk on Purim and go to sleep, right? All of the poskim say that Vishote Yayin v'Yiradem. Vishote Yayin v'Yiradem. What does Yiradem mean? Go to sleep. They all say that it's not enough to get shikr, you have to go to sleep. But Moshe Feinstein's son testifies that the great Rav Moshe Feinstein would not drink on Purim, he would only he would take a nap. Moshe Feinstein. What's so important about taking a nap on Purim? I'm glad you asked. You ever the expression, sleep like a baby? Last night I slept like a baby, Avram. I woke up crying every hour. Not really.
Must be exhausted.
Not really. But you ever see the way, my Rebbe Rapam said, you ever see the way a baby sleeps, Chanoch? A baby sleeps so peacefully, you'll say, because the baby knows that Ima is right there. And if he begins to cry for something, she'll run in from the next room to hug him. On Purim, we have to sleep like a baby. The Iker is not the drinking. Iker is to go to sleep. And to sleep like a baby, that our Ima, the Shechina HaKdosha, is very close to us. And is always there for us, even though when we think that she is not. The Shechina HaKdosha is feminine. So that's the Iker on Purim, is to sleep like a baby peacefully, that our parent is close by. Our loving parent. That's the Iker. That's just amazing. Now the Purim miracle, it's ongoing. Kriyas Yam Sov only one night. Purim miracle is much greater, Avram, because on and on and on. I'll give you an example. The wonderful state of Israel. 3 years after Auschwitz. Make any sense? A third of our people were massacred, destroyed. We rise like a phoenix. Is that the right word? Out of the ashes of Auschwitz. To build the jewel of the Middle East. The leader of high-tech, low-tech, you name it, smartphone, dumb phones. That's not that's natural.
No, it's
Jews are smarter, we have better brains. What is it? If you look in Zechariah chapter 8, Zechariah was a contemporary of Mordechai and Esther. When he lived, Israel was in total ruins. Avram, this was the end of Chorban Bayis Rishon. The country was totally desolated. He says, Kayomar Hashem, Zechariah 8. Thus says God, Od yeshvu zikenim berachovot Yushalayim. Old people will sit in the broad streets of Jerusalem. V'rechovot ha'ir yamalu yeladim ishakim. And the streets of Jerusalem will be filled with children, what? Laughing and playing. Now, when he said that, they said, take a pill and lie down. You're delusional. Because when he said that, Israel was what? Devastated, ruined, desolate. There was hardly anybody here. And he says, Ki yipale be'einei shevet ha'am hazeh. It's a pella. I know you guys think I'm off the wall. But Zechariah 24 years ago said, is a pella. You'll see. He wasn't talking to them. Aviezer. Bayomim aheim. What does Bayomim aheim mean?
in those days.
What are those days, Cecil? Now. 24 years. He said, Vayomim aheim. But he meant now. Now listen to this. Then God takes over. Gam be'einai yipolenu Hashem. God says, you think it's a wonder in your eyes? Gam be'einai. You know, also in my eyes, yipoleh. God says, I'm also wondering, how could it be? God says it. Abraham, 3 years after the Holocaust, how could you come back from Auschwitz and build this wonderful country? And the streets of Jerusalem are bustling with kinderlach, kanei nahara, and old people. God says it's a pella for me as well. Isn't that a greater miracle than the splitting of the Red Sea? Isn't it much greater? So in the month of Adar, we celebrate that miracle, the miracle of the state of Israel, against all odds. And God says, even for me, it's a pele. Pele, Avram. What's pele mean? A wonder. God, Kaviyoko, says it's also a wonder for me. That's pretty amazing. Now, there's no Hallel on Purim. What am I, chopped liver, Avram? There's no Hallel in Purim, right? So there are many explanations. And also, why can't we celebrate on the same day? Why are you mixing me up? 14, 15, some people in Gilo do it twice. Chava, can't we be on the same page? Can't we all get along?
Would be nice.
Right? So I have an answer. If you look in the book of Ezra, 50 years before Haman, Koresh had made a proclamation that all the Jews should what? All come home. 50 years before Haman. Only 42,000 Jews answered the call. Millions remained in Babylon, Long Island, and Persia. So God had to send a Haman. What are you guys still doing in Persia, in Iran? 50 years earlier, Koresh had encouraged you to come home. I'll help you, he said. And the Jews ignored him. So I think, therefore, Avram, there's no Hallel. It's a penalty. And therefore, we don't celebrate on the same day. Because the Jews had no business being in Persia 50 years after Cyrus Vance had already what? Declared, come home and I'll help you build the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah. My humble opinion, that's why there's no Hallel, and therefore we don't celebrate on the same day. It's a penalty that the Jews didn't belong in Persia after Cyrus Vance had already encouraged them to come home. He was the king of the world at the time. God calls him my Mashiach. If the Jews would have come home then, Mashiach would have come 2,400 years ago. Shalom, no Holocaust. But no, they remained. We have our kosher pizza shops and mikvahs in Babylon, Long Island. We don't have to come. So Hashem sent them a Haman. Yes?
Wondering if it's possible that Tisha B'Av we also don't say Hallel on the
Tisha B'Av.
Eicha we don't say Hallel, and in the Megillah So if we don't
On Hanukkah, you say Hallel.
adhere to Haman
Right.
and do Torah mitzvahs, then we might be saying Eicha. We might have said Eicha for the last time.
That's right. If the Jews would have come home on the Koresh, the second temple never would have been destroyed. Gemara and Yuma tells us that. But we didn't come back, so therefore Hashem said, you guys are not interested.
But they
And
came
today,
back after.
what?
They came back after Haman. And
Even after Haman, who came back? Still,
Ezra and the Kohanim.
Ezra came back.
And the Kohanim.
But Mordechai and Esther didn't come back.
Oh, that wasn't-
They remained. And even after Haman, that's the pellet. Even after Haman, some just don't get it. They remained in Borough Park.
Stop, but Esther was
Was stuck, but she was the queen.
But Mordecai was
And Mordechai was the prime minister. Even they remained in Hamadan. Yehuda has their tomb on the video. They're buried in Hamadan.
Get into my blog tomorrow.
Today in Iran, the Iranians pay homage to them. Yeah. They made the place a mosque, I think. Esther, my wife was there when she was a girl. Her father took her to the kever of Mordechai and Esther. Shushan Abira today is called Hamadan. But it's still there, and the Iranian government keeps it up. There's a shomer there. But anyway, on Purim, Avraham, we have to do a 6 mitzvot on Purim. To read the Megillah, to say Al Hanisim, to read Vayova Yamolek, Purim morning, Exodus 17. Even women have to hear the reading, the Amalekite attack. Mitzvah number 4, Matonos Lavyonim. Mitzvah number 5, Mishloach Manot. And mitzvah number 6, Avraham, Manja Manja, Sudem Yayin. And that you do last. Why do you do that last in Suda? Saving the best for last, right?
Aron Chaviv.
Achman Chaviv, right? Manja Manja. Because you do the Suda and Yayin first, you'd be too shikah to do the other 5, right?
Forget. You'll fall
Right?
asleep.
But my Rebbe Rapam gave another explanation. Achman Chaviv. The mundane act of eating, how does the rabbis elevate it to a mitzvah? And all Jewish Judaism revolves around Chava. They try to kill us. We won. Let's eat.
Exactly.
Right? Why? Shabbos, Yontiv, Brit Milah, Bar Mitzvah. You finish a Masechta. Why is it always manja manja? You hear the question? Why? So my Rebbe Rapami explained. He says that when there's a Shabbos, there's a Yontiv, or you go to a bris, you finish a Masechta, there's an extra amount of Kedusha that the Neshama is absorbing from the event, from the day. So the Neshama is absorbing that extra Kedusha of the Shabbos, the Yontiv, the Bris Milah, the Bar Mitzvah, Sudat Mitzvah, finishing a Masechta. But the Guf is also part of the Mensch. A Neshama alone, Avram, without a Guf, is that a Mensch? So the Guf says, what about me? How do I participate in the Kedusha of the day or the event? I don't want to be just a bystander, says the Guf. How do I tap into the extra Kedusha that's being absorbed by my alter ego, the Neshama? What's the answer, Avram? The Guf says, am I chopped liver? So by eating chopped liver, I like chopped liver. Somehow, my Rebbe called it spiritual osmosis. By eating, the Guf gets a transplant. The Kedusha that the Neshama is absorbing from the event, whatever it is, the Shabbos, the Yontiv, the tractate you're finishing, the act of eating passes the Kedusha from the Neshama through the Guf. So therefore, Yahadut, it revolves around eating. This way, the Guf can absorb by a transplant part of the Kedusha from the Neshama. So therefore, we do so many mitzvahs on Purim. We read the Megillah, we say Al Hanisim, Vayova Yamalek, Matanos Avyodim Shloach Monois Avram. Now we're ready for the transplant. Is it transplant or transfusion? Now through the Suda, saving the best for last, Arvie, by eating, how the Guf gets the transfusion of all of those Kedusha that the Neshama absorbed from giving tzedakah and reading the Megillah and sending Mashloach Monos and saying Al Hanisim. Now the Guf is ready to get what? The transfusion of Kedusha. So therefore we save it what? For last. Yom Kippurim. The Zohar says a day, Yom Kippur is a day like Purim. This is very strange, no? A day like Purim. Think about it. The Zohar points out amazing parallels. On Yom Kippur, you have a fasting Kohen Gadol dressed in special garments, going into the holy sanctum to pray for the life of his people at the risk to his life. What's the parallel? Queen Esther also fasting like the high priest, also wearing special clothes, going into the inner sanctum, the king's inner sanctum, the same language, Chot Shapnimi,
With the enemy.
and pleading for the life of her people at the risk to her life, like the Kohen Gadol. If he didn't have the right Malshavas, he dropped dead there. It's amazing parallels of him between the fasting Queen Esther begging the king for the life of her people and the fasting high priest on Yom Kippur going into the inner sanctum begging the King of Kings for the life of his people at the risk to his life. It's just amazing the parallels between Yom Kippurim and Purim, even though they seem like what? Opposite days. Yom Kippur only atones ben Adam lamokim, only sins between man and God. Sins between man and man, Yom Kippur does not atone. And we know which sin is worse, Aviezer. Which sin is worse? Between what? Why? Because when you sin against God, it's one. You sin against a fellow human being, you're sinning against him and his godly soul. And the godly soul that lives inside of him. So sinning against a human being is twice as bad. Yom Kippur only atones sins between man and God, but not man and man. So which day does atone sins between man and man? Says the Ari, Purim. Through Mishloach Monot Matonas Lavionim, you're getting kapara ben Adam lechavero, which is more severe than what? Ben Adam lamokan. That's pretty amazing. The Riyah Kodesh goes further. He says, there's a halacha, ein kiddush al mokam suda. There's a halacha that when you make kiddush on Shabbos, you have to have a little meal there, otherwise the kiddush is not effective. So when you have a kiddush, you have to have a couple of cookies, otherwise the kiddush is not, doesn't take effect for you. But he gives it a Kabbalistic interpretation, the Ari. Ein kiddush el mokam suda. A person through Kiddusha, if you want to gauge and measure out from a person through Kiddusha, it's how he behaves when he's indulging in a feast. That's when you can measure a person through Kiddusha. It says there, why? On Yom Kippur, you're fasting, you're davening, you're weak, you're tired and hungry. Even if you wanted to sin, who'd want to sin with you? You ain't got the koyach to sin, and you don't smell so good either. Yom Kippur, right? Avra, who wants to sin with you anyway, right? But Purim, when you're indulging in a Suda and wine, and you let it all hang out, and you still remain loyal to the Torah, that's a true measure of what? Kiddusha. Ein Kiddush el Mokem Suda. If you want to gauge a person's true Kiddusha, it's how he behaves when he's at a Suda. On Yom Kippur, you're tired or hungry, you're fasting all day. That's no trick to be holy. You're isolated from people, you only think about yourself. But when you are involved with others, dafka at a feast, and letting it go, and you still retain your loyalty to the Torah, that's a true sign, says the Ari, of a person's Kiddusha. That's pretty amazing. The Hamantashen. The Hamantashen. Most of it is covered up with dough, but the jam peeks through a little bit, right? Why is it made? Everything in Judaism, even the minhag is holy Avram. Right? The Hamantashen, it's mostly covered up, but in the center, there's a little bit of jam, a moon peeking through. Why? My great-grandfather, the symbol of the Purim miracle. God is covered up, like the dough covers up. But if you look carefully, you'll see the jam peeking through. Peekaboo. Got to look carefully. Some Hamantashen have less jam than others. You got to look hard. But it's there. Raphael, it's in there. Right? It's in there.
The eye of the tiger.
You got to look. The Hamantashen. That's pretty amazing. Now, there's a strange medrash that when Mashiach comes, the only festival to be celebrated is what? Purim. That's very strange, because David, Ani Mama Muna Shalema, that the Torah that we have will never change, right? So what does it mean? So again, this is an Agadic part of the Talmud, and the Ramban told us that only the halachic part of the Talmud has to be taken literally. Any Agadic statement, like Purim be the only Yontiv, is an Agadah. It's not to be taken literally, because we have Ani Mam and Shalom Mamuna Shalema, that the Torah that we have will never change. So what does it mean? My Rebbe explained, Rapam, if you analyze it, all of the holidays are really contained where? Purim. Let's start with Rosh Hashanah. On Purim, weren't we judged who will live and who will die? Avram on Purim. That's Rosh Hashanah. And that's the next Yontiv. Yom Kippurim. A day like Purim. Yom Kippur is a day of giving the Torah. We got the second Luchos when? On Yom Kippur. And we got the Torah again on Purim. The Jews accepted the Torah again lovingly and willingly. So you have the Yom Kippur aspect in Purim. What's next? Pesach. No? Sukkot. Stop at Sukkot. Thank you. Sukkot, Hashgacha Protiyos. God's loving embrace. The Sukkah hugged by the one above. That's why a Sukkah, to be kosher, needs 2 arms and a tefach. I mean, 2 walls and a tefach. The Rebbe says 2 walls and a tefach. That's all it needs. It's the human arm. From here to here is like 1 wall. From here is another wall. This is a tefach. When you walk into a sukkah, you're being hugged by the one above. It's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Avram, weren't we hugged by the one above on Purim? There you have what? Sukkah. What's next? No, Torah. What's next after Sukkot? Shavuot. Chag Matan Torah. Shavuot, we got the Torah on the coercion, shotgun wedding. On Purim, Kibul v'Kibul HaYehudim. This time we got the Torah, not a shotgun wedding. This time we got the Torah, says Rashi, lovingly and willingly. So you have an aspect of Shavuos when? Purim. If you got Pesach, we got Cherut, freedom, freedom from slavery. On Purim, we got freedom from death. What's more important before you? Cherut, Chag Cherut, freedom from slavery. But in Purim, we got freedom from death. Isn't that more important? So all of Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, the great revelry that we have on Purim, is Simchas Torah in Purim. All of the Chagim are contained where? In Purim. Isn't that incredible? So it doesn't mean they'll be canceled. That's Haggadah. It's just the idea that if you analyze it carefully, Avram, all of the Chagim are contained in Purim. In Purim. This Thursday we have no class because it's Purim, but we do have a class on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. It's Tanis Esther. 4 o'clock is the class. 5:15 is Mincha, and the class is called Esther. When is sin a virtue? Question mark. When is sin a virtue?
For more of Rabbi Sprecher's teachings, visit rabbisprecher.com.